I'm only getting to do it because of something sad that happened. I think a lot of that has dissipated over the last 3 years.
Two very different legends, two shocking revelations. On one side, a gentle powerhouse who spent decades straddling the worlds of heartfelt country and iconic rock. On the other hand, a guitar hero who refuses to go quietly into the past. This video dives into what really happened when Vince Gill stepped into one of rock's most scrutinized roles, and why his choices have kept even lifelong Eagles fans guessing. Plus, we'll touch on a surprising confession that changed the way people see his artistry forever. Ready to find out what most people missed? Buckle up, because these stories will make you rethink everything. Vince Gill's surprising confession about his role with the Eagles in 2017 sent shockwaves through both the country and rock worlds. Gill had spent decades as a respected figure in Nashville, earning numerous awards as a singer-songwriter and virtuoso guitarist. But when the legendary Eagles invited him to join them on stage following the death of co-founder Glenn Frey, many wondered if Gill was up to the task. It was a bold move for the band and an even bolder one for Gill. Fans had spent a lifetime hearing Frey sing the lead vocals on so many classic tracks. To ask anyone else to do that was risky, and nobody knew exactly what Gill would say or do about it until he spoke candidly in interviews. In a revealing moment, Gill explained how the invitation came as a complete surprise. According to Gill, Don Henley himself told him, "You're the only guy I wanted," leaving him stunned. Gill was upfront about the weight of that statement, telling Rolling Stone and other media outlets that he never imagined stepping into that role. Fans had expected the Eagles to retire after Frey passed away in 2016. Even Henley had initially declared the end of the band. Yet, after careful thought and heartfelt conversations, they decided to honor Frey's memory by continuing. Gill was humbled by their faith in him and also worried about whether fans would embrace the change. There was tension and uncertainty with these first public performances with the Eagles. Gill told reporters that he was nervous every single time he stepped on stage with them in 2017. There were rumors that his singing and guitar style didn't mesh with the Eagles' sound. Social media and fan forums were filled with reactions, ranging from supportive to outright hostile. Some fans were hoping Gill would infuse new energy and talent into the lineup. Others countered by saying that no one could ever fill Frey's shoes and started questioning if Gill was the right fit. Gill maintained a high degree of self-awareness and measured restraint throughout this time. He openly confessed in interviews that stepping into a band with such a vast legacy was, in every way, a difficult thing to do. More than anything, Gill's confession showed the human side of a man more than capable of expressing himself on stage. A heavy burden for one with an impressive history, a man's talent acknowledged in front of large audiences. He chose honesty over bravado, offering a rare glimpse into the emotional and professional turmoil his unexpected decision to join the Eagles caused. More than anything, this admission struck a chord with the public, making it a prominent moment in his already prominent career. Still, the real challenge was stepping into shoes so big most thought they could never truly be filled. Stepping into Glenn Frey's shoes was never going to be simple. Frey wasn't just a founding member of the Eagles, he was their frontman, a principal songwriter, and a face that fans associated with the band's most iconic moments. Frey's voice had a rich, warm tone that defined hits like "Take It Easy," "Tequila Sunrise," and "Lion Eyes." After Frey passed away in 2016, most assumed the band would quietly retire. Even Don Henley suggested that Frey's absence would make continuing impossible. However, when Henley and the remaining members decided to play select shows as a tribute, they faced the unavoidable question, who could sing those classic songs? That's where Vince Gill came in. Don Henley's choice of Gill was anything but arbitrary. Henley publicly explained that Gill was "the only guy I wanted," making clear just how much he trusted Gill musically and personally. Gill's vocal range, tone, and laid-back stage presence complemented the band without seeming to impersonate Frey. Henley and Gill had worked together before, notably on Henley's solo album Cass County, so the camaraderie was already there. Rumors at the time wondered if Henley had other names in mind. Could they have considered someone like Jackson Browne, or a younger singer? But Henley put those questions to rest, emphasizing that Gill was his top choice from the very beginning. While their musical connection was obvious, the deeper bond between Gill and Frey was often overlooked by many fans. Gill had run into Frey a few times over the years. Both men respected each other, forged over decades in an industry that usually ate its young. Gill often talked about the respect he had for Frey, not just as a singer-songwriter himself but as someone who had mentored the younger generation of musicians. The passing of Frey hit Gill hard personally, and that made putting the vocal duties on Gill all the more emotional. Gill has said that never a time will he go out on stage to honor Frey's legacy without fully acknowledging that, softening the view of some fans who were skeptical about whether anybody could do justice to Frey's role. That personal connection set Gill apart in the unique capacity he fulfilled in the band. Rather than imitating Frey, Gill approached every performance as a tribute. You could see him on stage tending to Frey's vocal parts with care and humility. Some critics may have wondered if that was right, but for most concertgoers, those moments felt respectful and real to them. It's not about replacing Frey, it never could be. It's about carrying his spirit forward so that audiences continue to hear those beloved tracks live, and that's exactly what Gill has tried to do. Vince Gill built his career long before joining the Eagles. He rose to prominence as one of the most celebrated artists in country music, winning more than 20 Grammy Awards and selling millions of albums worldwide. Known for his smooth vocal style, heartfelt lyrics, and sharp guitar work, Gill was already an icon in Nashville. Hits like "Go Rest High on That Mountain" and "When I Call Your Name" showcased his ability to connect with an audience and earned him deep respect across the genre. Because of this, his decision to step into the Eagles, one of America's most famous rock bands, raised eyebrows among fans who wondered if someone so steeped in country could fit into a legendary rock lineup. Yet Gill was uniquely equipped for the challenge. Throughout his career, he had displayed an impressive versatility as a musician, whether performing traditional country, bluegrass, or intricate guitar-driven songs. Even those who knew him mostly as a singer were often surprised to discover his chops as a lead guitarist. Rumors persisted that Gill was initially hesitant to accept the Eagles' offer, perhaps even questioning whether stepping into a classic rock band was the right fit, but those close to him describe Gill as someone who always appreciated new artistic challenges. Rather than approaching the role as a radical shift, he viewed it as an extension of his lifelong appreciation for American music across all styles. By that first concert he played with the Eagles, Gill had already shown that his talents could complement the band's sound with ease. What was once a skeptical audience came to appreciate his contribution when he played intricate guitar parts with taste and precision. Observers noted that the subtlety and restraint that Gill had learned as a country session player allowed him to add to the song rather than drown it under his own merit. And if anything, his range and tonal quality fit comfortably in the blends, providing the Eagles with much of their traditional vocal aptitude. There were some who wondered whether any other country players could have carried it off so elegantly or whether it was simply Gill's specialty. Well, Gill pretty much has explained how it feels to be caught in two worlds. He did say in one of the interviews that becoming an Eagle was nothing anyone had done before, even an old hand such as himself. But for Gill, it really did not seem a big change. He saw it as just another part of his journey as a musician. He also said something about knowing that some diehards will never accept him quite as an Eagle since Glenn Frey was one of a kind, but apparently Gill has never seemed much into proving anything. He walks the tricky tightrope with humility and respect, keeping true to his roots but respecting the legacy of the Eagles. When Vince Gill accepted the invitation to join the Eagles, one of the first decisions was to focus entirely on the band's catalog rather than his own solo material. Fans quickly noticed that Gill never performed his country hits like "Whenever You Come Around" or "Go Rest High on That Mountain" during the Eagles shows. Many wondered why an artist of Gill's stature, who had decades of Grammy-winning songs under his belt, would never add even one of them to the setlist. The answer lies in the conversation he had early on with Don Henley about keeping the Eagles brand intact. Gill has explained in interviews that the idea of playing his solo material simply never sat right with him. According to Gill, Henley invited him in to help carry on the band's legacy after Glenn Frey's passing, not to promote his own career. In one notable exchange, Henley heard Gill playing "Whenever You Come Around" during a soundcheck and remarked that they could easily work up the song for a show. Gill, however, politely declined. Rumors circulated about tension over that decision, but Gill himself put them to rest by sharing his honest perspective. It was never about ego, it was about respecting what the Eagles stood for as a band and what the fans had paid to see. That choice became a defining part of Gill's role in the group. The specific collection of hits that Gill was surrounded by piqued the curiosity of many outsiders, wondering whether he had ever confronted an uncomfortable situation brought on by this. Was there pressure behind the scenes, however, to spotlight his work? He hinted that although it would be painful not to play some of his own favorites on the road, he knew his role was as a guest playing tribute to someone else's songs. This would not have been an easy identification for the longtime Eagles listeners who had come to hear "Take It Easy" and "Desperado" only to have Gill turn the spotlight on his solo material. This was one of the ways that he left the integrity of the show intact. People still ask if Gill will ever take one of his own songs and put it in a future Eagles show as this tour appears to come to an end. How would Henley and the others feel about making an exception at this late date? Gill has so far been silent on the idea, but the fact that it has even been put out there shows his mark will continue. By choosing to step back and keep the focus on the Eagles' story rather than his own, Gill has shown the kind of humility that most fans and even some critics admire. Sharing the stage with Joe Walsh is one of the most exciting and unpredictable parts of Vince Gill's role in the Eagles. Walsh, long celebrated as one of rock's most distinctive guitarists, is known for his energetic style, fiery solos, and trademark sense of humor. When Gill joined the band in 2017, many wondered how the two would split up guitar duties, or if they could share the spotlight at all. But according to Gill, that concern vanished almost immediately. Gill has said repeatedly that trading licks with Walsh on classics like Funk No. 49 and Life's Been Good is one of the most rewarding experiences of his entire career. Instead of feeling like a competition, it feels like a conversation between two players who respect one another. Of course, Walsh isn't the only guitarist in the Eagles. Gill also shares the stage with Stuart Smith, a longtime touring member who was key to helping fill Don Felder's shoes back in 2001. Smith is known for his incredible technical skill and note-for-note reproductions of classic solos, especially on staples like Hotel California. Then there's Chris Holt, the most recent addition, who joined the band for their final tour and brings his own subtle energy into the mix. Gill has often pointed out that each player has his own role, and there's never been a sense of ego clashing. Instead, there's an unspoken balance. Everyone plays to serve the song, not to outshine one another. That sense of balance has shaped how Gill views himself within the band. Even though Gill has risen to fame as a solo artist and been in the limelight for decades, he has quickly stated his role with the Eagles as more of a guest or honorary member instead of a frontman. There are rumors that Gill tends to remain backstage to give space to the band's deep relationships and decades-long history. Some fans have even questioned whether he really ever feels like fitting in this long history. Gill has rarely responded to such rumors directly, but his humility while on stage says much. While at the same time he is taking leads or solos, he melts into the greater fabric of the sound, consciously giving his support to the other players in their moments to shine. Indeed, this presents one of the more astonishing dynamics within Gill's extraordinary tenure with the band. Instead of reshaping the Eagles around him, Gill fitted himself into their sound as it had existed for decades. Some will say he could have claimed a louder position, since here is a singer-guitarist with a history of his own over the last 4 decades. But it was the humble trading of licks, taking a back seat to support, and never hogging the spotlight that earned him quiet respect from his bandmates and fans. Yet even the most thrilling stage chemistry couldn't shield him from the backlash that was brewing in the background. Facing criticism from some of the Eagles' most diehard fans was one of the biggest challenges Vince Gill took on after joining the band. When Glenn Frey passed away in 2016, many thought the group would never tour again. Frey was one of the most recognizable voices in rock history, and there was an understandable sense of loyalty to him among longtime listeners. So when Gill appeared alongside Don Henley, Joe Walsh, and the other Eagles, a portion of the fan base was quick to voice their disapproval. Online forums, comment sections, and even some press reviews reflected skepticism about whether someone from the country world could ever fit into such a defining rock sound. Gill himself never shied away from this issue. In several interviews, he acknowledged hearing the negative remarks and respected where they were coming from. "I don't sing like Glenn, and I don't pretend to," he explained when asked directly about the criticism. That honesty set the tone for how he handled the backlash. Instead of trying to imitate Frey's vocal style, he focused on honoring the original recordings. Gill understood that, for many fans, the Eagles weren't just a band but a part of their personal histories. Some wondered aloud if the remaining members could have found someone who sounded closer to Frey, or if they even should have continued at all, but Gill didn't take those feelings personally. Gill took to heart the job in which he was employed, thereby refusing to get defensive. Many of the negative comments were more of an emotional reaction to change than legitimate criticisms of his abilities. Rumor had it that he occasionally contemplated walking away from the project during the very first days of great scrutiny. There is no way to tell if that was ever the truth, but it does indicate how intense the fan debate has been. Nonetheless, Gill kept his focus on the task at hand and kept his heart clean. Night after night, audiences could see him, with great respect, sing Frey's vocal lines on such hits as "New Kid in Town," as a tribute rather than an effort to replace a legend. Respect and humility were gradually getting Gill to win over many doubters. Even some of the most cynical critics admitted Gill was a worthy and heartfelt custodian of the Eagles songs. Some longtime fans who were slightly distressed at first grew to appreciate his singing style as a sincere fit. Although some hardcore Frey fans refused to buy into the Gill phenomenon, the vast majority were ready to accept that he did the job in a considerate, skillful manner with a genuine desire to keep the spirit of the band alive. After decades of success as a solo artist, stepping into the Eagles also meant stepping into a demanding touring schedule that took a personal toll on Vince Gill. Touring is grueling under any circumstances, but for someone who had long been accustomed to performing on his own terms, it posed unique challenges. Gill himself has acknowledged in interviews that, at his age, packing up for the road is not as simple as it was in his 20s or 30s. Rumors have circulated that balancing the intensity of the Eagles' tour dates with his own personal life hasn't always been easy. Fans who see him on stage may not realize how much stamina and discipline it takes to keep up with a show that requires him to sing and play intricate guitar parts night after night. And then there are the health and aging factors that come into play. Touring requires long flights, late nights, and conditions that are often less than ideal, and Gill is brazen in his admission of paying attention to his physical limits. There have been no reports of major health problems, but it has been noted by observers that he traverses the stage with more caution than he used to. Rumors suggest he has been careful not to overextend himself and that he listens intently to his body in making choices about tunings ahead. Such caution is something every road-weary musician learns to adopt, especially after decades on the road. Through it all, Gill's resolve for the Eagles tour remains firm. Audiences watching him navigate this chapter often sense that he is weighing personal sacrifice against professional pride. Whether or not he keeps going like this after the Long Goodbye tour is something only he can answer. Will this mean an end to his years on the road, or will other avenues for performing open up that suit life better? Either way, it is evident that Gill has accepted the reality of what touring means at this point in his career and, in true Gill fashion, has carried that load with grace. Joining the Eagles for their Long Goodbye tour gave Vince Gill a unique perspective on a band that has shaped American rock for decades. Announced in 2023, the tour was pitched as the last chapter in a long, successful career spanning generations. Gill, who had already been playing with them since 2017, saw this as a bittersweet opportunity. Fans had hoped for more years of touring, but even Gill himself acknowledged that the band could not go on forever. Rumors circulated at the time that health, personal priorities, and the sheer intensity of decades on the road had finally caught up to everyone involved. Gill has spoken about feeling a sense of closure as the Eagles embarked on these final shows. According to him, every performance took on a different weight, knowing it could be the last in that city. While some veteran acts stretched their farewell tours across several years, Gill was mindful that the Eagles had already created a legacy that didn't need further embellishment. Longtime observers noted that there was no gimmickry involved, this was truly an ending. Even some of the most devoted followers, who had seen the band dozens of times before, remarked that they could sense the gravity of each setlist as the tour unfolded across major venues. Fans' reactions ranged from emotional to celebratory. Night after night, concertgoers took to social media to describe the shows as powerful, heartfelt, and, in some cases, surprisingly energetic given the band's years of touring. Some wondered aloud whether they'd ever see Gill and the Eagles on stage together again after the final dates in Las Vegas. Would they be persuaded to come back after a break in accordance with the rules established by past rock bands? That's anyone's guess. What was clear was that Gill, from the outset, was adamant about these shows living up to a half-century of music history. Even the most doubtful fans who were initially hesitant to accept his stepping in began to see how important it was for them to hear him sing Take It Easy and Lion Eyes one last time. Gill will know he was there, so the Eagles could give their audience a heartfelt yet dignified farewell. All self-respecting observers going back through the history of the whole band give due credit to the fact that Gill was an important part of keeping the stature of this pivotal moment. If this is indeed from the fans' point of view the Eagles' last chapter, Gill's contribution to The Long Goodbye will testify to the great talent, humility, and respect he has for this band and for its fans. Following the conclusion of the tour, the questions about Gill and the Eagles will only escalate. Vince Gill's role with the Eagles may have introduced him to a wider rock audience, but one of his most consistent passions over the years has been keeping American roots music alive. Throughout his career, Gill has embraced his identity as a preservationist. Whether it's traditional country, bluegrass, western swing, or the classic harmonies of bands like the Eagles, he views himself as someone who helps maintain a rich musical tradition. Fans familiar with his work outside the Eagles know that his deep respect for American music predates this chapter, and it shapes the way he approaches every project. That passion is most evident in his long-standing work with the Time Jumpers, a Nashville-based supergroup dedicated to western swing and traditional country styles. Even when he's not in the spotlight, Gill is happiest playing in the background with them, putting the emphasis on ensemble playing and craft. Rumors often surface that he prefers these smaller venues to big arena tours, simply because it allows him to focus on the music. Whether those rumors hold any weight or not, they point to an important truth: Gill has built his career on being a musician first, a star second. More of that same mentality applies during his tenure with the Eagles. Even having this rare opportunity of stepping into an iconic band as a high-profile guest, Gill has never made an issue about himself. Instead of reinventing how the Eagles sound, he would rather preserve what they do so well. Critics and longtime fans have recognized this humility, certainly the way he blends in with vocal harmonies and guitar parts that have been heard for decades. Some began to speculate whether his Nashville background would slightly tip the Eagles' rock legacy. Gill, however, is careful to keep his contribution subtle, allowing the band to retain their feel. This fragile balancing act between preservation and reinvention will probably be the very essence of this chapter in Gill's life. Gill neither pursued attention nor detracted from the spotlight on others. Instead, he entertained by giving audiences essentially what they wanted to hear while treating the material with dignity, his own and others. With one wondering what Gill might be doing next on the horizon of the tour next year and just ahead of him, it is clear that he will continue to honor the great traditions of the past while ever leaving open the lane to new forms of expression. And while honoring the past will always matter to him, questions about what lies ahead keep stirring. As the Eagles' Long Goodbye tour winds down, one of the biggest questions is what comes next for Vince Gill. At 68, Gill still has plenty of music left in him, and fans are wondering if he'll return to the solo career that earned him more than 20 Grammy Awards. Some speculate that a new album of original material could already be in the works, especially given his track record of writing heartfelt songs that connect across genres. Gill hasn't confirmed anything yet, but his team and longtime collaborators have hinted that solo projects might be back on the table once his obligations with the Eagles come to an end. There's also talk of future collaborations with other musicians. Gill has never been one to work in isolation. His years in Nashville's songwriting community and time with groups like the Time Jumpers show he thrives on sharing the stage. Rumors have circulated that Gill could explore new duets with younger artists or team up with some of the legends who, like him, bridge the worlds of country, folk, and rock. Whether that means one-off guest spots, a tribute album, or something more substantial, it seems inevitable that Gill will continue appearing alongside friends and peers who respect his craft. Then there's always the live scene. Would Gill then choose to shrink his touring meanwhile to devote more time to writing and recording? Some people close to him have suggested that after so many days on the road, he might be yearning for fewer opportunities that are much more intimate, special gigs in iconic venues or acoustic sets built around his deep songbook. Some rumors even suggest he would spend more time modeling for those coming up behind him in Nashville. Whatever route he opts for, he is still most likely to remain committed to his mission of keeping the vibrancy of American roots music. With this departure from a chapter involving the Eagles, Gill appears willing to face the future with the same humility and dedication that have characterized every aspect of his career. He should very much be expected to continue creating and collaborating with other artists, sharing his love for music in ways that reach people's hearts long past the farewell tour. And that's it for this one. If you enjoyed the ride, hit that like button and drop a comment sharing your thoughts. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss another deep dive like this. Ready for more? The next video is right here on your screen. Go ahead and click it to keep watching. Thanks for being here, and I'll catch you in the next one.